there, survey researchers. It is Mary here, and I'm very excited to introduce Module 3 to you. I hope everybody is enjoying a nice little break from the winter weather, as well as just getting into a good groove this semester. If there's any way that we can help you get into the groove and help you with your assignments, please don't hesitate to reach out. But let's go ahead and jump into Module 3. The main aims for this video, as well as for Module 3, are to go over annotated bibliographies, literature reviews, and we'll also talk a bit about citations, specifically APA citations. Your assignment for this module is going to have two parts to it. It'll have a bibliography part and then a literature review part. And so I'm going to try to break down both parts in this video and helpfully provide you with some helpful resources. First, we're going to think about peer-reviewed articles, then some helpful resources, and then get down to the nitty-gritty of how to write a bibliography and also touch a little bit on why we would do this. Let's first go over what a peer-reviewed article is. I've found this graphic and I really like this graphic. I can link the site below. I think it got cut off, but I can link it below if you're interested. But this graphic or flow really shows the process of how a paper goes from being written by a scholar to being published in a paper. Peer-reviewed articles are papers that are written by, like I mentioned, some sort of scholar or academic, and then they're submitted to scholarly journals where they undergo this rigorous process by other experts in that field. So it's the job of those reviewers to ensure the quality, the accuracy, the validity of the methods and procedures, and just the overall quality of the writing of the paper. And because of that process, it is assumed that those papers can be trusted. So especially in the social sciences, we mostly rely on peer-reviewed articles. Now that you know what a peer-reviewed article is, let's talk about some places where you can find a peer-reviewed article. The first place is Google Scholar. So Google Scholar is probably something we are all familiar with, but just in case, I'll take just a very quick second to go over that. So let's head over that way. Google Scholar is a great place to start because its search engine is really powerful, and I'll talk a little bit about that in comparison to the UK library database in just a minute. But for now, this is what it looks like, and then you can notice down here that we can look at articles or case law, and obviously for this class we're going to look at articles. So let's go ahead and just type something in here. Okay, so I had something in there already, so we're just going to go with that. What is the history of social science? And then, of course, they're going to give you some articles that you can go through. But notice off to the side that it's going to list some dates, which we'll talk about also in a minute, but that is really helpful and important. And then also you can go down here to review articles, click on that. And then ideally everything that comes up will be a peer-reviewed article. Next, you can think about the UK library. And the great thing about the UK library is it's available whether you are in Lexington, Kentucky, or taking the class virtually, because of course there's so much that you can do online. So let's go ahead and hop over there because there's a couple little things that I want to show you that is available at the UK library. Let's just stick with the topic that we started with about the history of social science. So I typed that in, and then it is going to, of course, list some articles for me. But the thing I wanted to point out is that it has right here peer-reviewed. So that is really helpful. I almost always run any article that I find through the UK database just to see if it's peer-reviewed so that I know for sure. So that is just a really helpful icon to keep your eye out for. The second thing I wanted to mention is that the search engine through university databases often are not as good as something like Google. So if you don't have the exact title of the paper, or if you misspelled a word or something, sometimes it won't find it for you. So one way to just get around that is to Google it first, make sure you have all the right information, and then copy paste and put that in the search engine. But next, I wanted to show you some really great resources. So let's head over to another tab. This is just libraries.uky.edu. And if you notice over here where the search engine is, it says InfoCat, Books and More, Databases, Journals, and Explore UK. So in a minute, we're going to talk about these databases and journals, and that's another great way to refine your search. is you can go directly to scholarly journals that you know are in your field. And so then you can just come over here and click on that and it's going to take you to those journals. The last thing that I just found out about that I wanted to pass on to you is you can actually schedule a consultation with a librarian. So if you're feeling stuck on your topic or you need extra help finding certain resources, go to this, which is the libraries.uky.edu/ask, and it says research help, and then you find a librarian in your subject, and then you can just like book a consultation with them. So my first appointment is sometime in the middle of February. I'm very excited, and it might be something that you find helpful as well. So I mentioned that you could go straight to the academic literature databases. You can do that through Google or the UK Library. And some common ones are PubMed, especially obviously if you have anything in medicine, JSTOR, which is JSTOR, and then Science Direct. So the great thing about going just straight to one of those literature databases is you can almost guarantee that it'll be peer reviewed. The next place to find peer-reviewed articles is just by reading the articles that you have, and keep your eye out for recurring authors. So pay attention to who is constantly being cited and who just different works that you might find. Jot those down, and those might be worth looking into as well. The final two that I'll talk about is snowballing and then current research. So let me take you over to another page to show you what I mean by snowballing. Snowballing is a really helpful tool, especially if you are new to the topic or you don't have a lot of scholarly journals to work with and you're just kind of at the beginning stages. The idea behind snowballing is to read an article that you are interested in, and then go to the reference section and just look at all of the research that they cited. Who are the authors? What are the papers that stand out to you? And then if you think that's relevant to what you're trying to work on, just go use that resource. So while snowballing is a great strategy to use, it does have its limitations. Snowballing, by definition, will mean that all of the references will have been written before the paper you're reading, which means they might not be the most current research. And so because of that, you'll want to make sure that you are incorporating some ways in your system to find current research. So at the very least, 1 year prior, but I think I actually am not 100% sure, but I think something at least within the last 3 years, you do want to make sure that your peer-reviewed articles in your bibliography do include current research. So just keep that one limitation in mind when you are thinking about snowballing. Next, let's talk about some helpful resources that you might find handy when you are starting to put your bibliography together. So the first is the APA handbook. If you don't have a physical copy of that, it may be worth getting your hands on, but there is also a lot available online these days. Purdue OWL, which I'll show you in just a minute. Many people are familiar with that, but I'll just do a quick view of that. Zotero and EndNote are two other reference systems that a lot of people use. I talked with the UK Writing Center the other day, and the woman there recommended bibliography generators such as BibMe, EasyBib, and Citation Machine. I have not used any of those, but they came from the director at the Writing Center, so those might be great resources as well. And then on that note, the Writing Center itself. So you may or may not know that UK offers free writing services through the Writing Center, and you can schedule a 1-hour appointment and they will help give you some guidance on how to improve your paper. So it's a great resource. If you are not familiar with OWL Purdue, this is what it looks like. And again, my little viewer is cutting off a lot of the page, but you just type in OWL Purdue, it'll come to a page similar to this. Then you can click over here and tell it what you want it to look for. Type in the title that you're looking for. And again, like the UK Library, your title does need to be pretty precise for that. And then it exports your citation. And the purpose of this OWL Purdue is to get your APA citation. So again, I think some people might have something else if you're more at the English department, but social sciences were APA 7. And then the great part is it will give you the citation for your reference section as well as your in-text citation. now that we know what a peer-reviewed article is, how to find peer-reviewed articles, we are now ready to write our bibliography. So how we would write a bibliography is to first put the full citation in APA for the most part. We'll go at the top, and then you're going to write a 1 to 2 sentence summary of the article's main findings, and then some sort of reflection. And this is, Dr. Meriker recommends this, and this really is a great practice to start incorporating into your work, is just reflecting on the articles you read, thinking about how they connect with each other, and essentially you really want to start creating this web of knowledge, and reflection is going to help you do that well. One last thought is about why you would take the time to write a bibliography outside of obviously this assignment. So in the reading, the Booth et al. Reading, he provides some information, or I guess they provide some information. I think it's on pages like 86, 87 that will talk more about this. But first, it really does help keep track of your own research. The second thing, it is going to make writing your reference section so much easier if you just get into the practice of putting all your APA citations in one spot. That is something that I have learned the very hard way. And if you start out your practices that way, you will probably be really grateful to yourself for doing that. And then the other thing is that it's just a great place where everything is cataloged. So when you leave your research for time and come back to it, you can kind of just scroll through the titles and summaries and help jog your memory about maybe different references or materials, articles that might be best to write for different articles that you're writing. So the second half of the assignment for Module 3 is to write your research summary. So the first half is to write your bibliography, which we went over. And so now we'll just spend just a couple minutes talking about the research summary. So first, we're going to think about what is the purpose of a literature review, summary versus synthesis, and then the process of this. At this point, I'm going to make a suggestion for another resource that I use all the time and is just fabulous. It's called Grad Coach. They have a website, a podcast, and a YouTube channel. I have learned so much from them. I think they are just a wonderful resource to use. And a lot of the ideas for the literature review that I'm adding here, I actually got from them. So giving them credit, but also I definitely highly recommend checking them out as well. So this part, we're going to think about what is the purpose of a literature review. And by writing your literature review, it is going to help to set the historical scene. So thinking about what is all the background about this topic that you are going to write about. And the literature review is going to help set that scene. It's going to help identify and define any key terms that you'll use in your paper. It's going to put your research into this broader context of that historical scene and background that you just developed. And then through that, you're also acknowledging any of the gaps from that prior research, and now how your paper and your work is going to fit to address those gaps and those problems. The next part is for literature review, we are not just summarizing, we're synthesizing. And I'm not going to go into this too much because in Module 1, I believe, I created a video where I just talked about summary versus synthesis. And so if you are unsure how to do that, that's a great place to just go back and watch that video. But essentially what you're doing in a literature review, or the purpose of a literature review, is to start a conversation between these articles and between these authors. And as you are putting this conversation together, you're also kind of inserting where you stand and if we agree or disagree with these authors, or adding a new perspective. So it's this craft of reading, summarizing, and starting this conversation and inserting yourself to it as well. The process of writing a literature review includes reviewing the existing literature, taking notes, planning, outlining, structuring your paper, and writing. So of course, we're going to review those peer-reviewed articles that we got. Then we're going to take notes. So I believe the Booth chapter will also address different systems of highlighting and note-taking and annotating and things like that. But One thing that I recommend that I don't think it talked about is coming up with some sort of color code system. And especially if you're working on a big project, it's really helpful to have, every time that there's a word that's being defined could be one color. And every time it's a main idea could be another color. And a subpoints could be another color. If what you're working on has a lot of historical legal implications, maybe any lawsuit recommended is another color, but some sort of system that works for you can really help when you're going back to review. Booth and so many people talk about it's really important not to just highlight, but to also engage. So summarize at the end of the chapter, write in margins, draw arrows, take notes, things like that. And there's just a lot of information about the importance of that also. And then when it comes time to taking notes, I think I talked about this in the other video too, just have a system that works for you, but also be prudent as to when you are summarizing something, paraphrasing something, or directly quoting it. So that way you are appropriately giving credit for direct quotes. And then definitely highly recommend anytime in your notes you put a direct quote, always put the APA citation next in-text citation next to it so you know where to find it when it's time to write. And then of course comes the planning, outlining, structuring your paper, and writing. But the last thing is, and it's cut off at the bottom, do not be deceived. This is not a linear process. It is an iterative process, which means that you'll review the literature, take notes, plan, outline, structure, write, review the literature, take notes, plan, write, and so on. And that is it. We do hope you join us on February 10th from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our next synchronous meeting. And that is it. Thank you so much. And again, I hope you found this helpful. I will see you in a meeting soon. Bye.